to today's episode of Places, People, Purpose. In yesterday's episode, we talked about the history of Paris up through World War II. Today, we're going to look at more of the history of Paris after the war. Before doing so, though, we want to make you aware that our podcast is just one way to experience the places we visit. Our website, placespeoplepurpose.com, has pictures from our visits to all of these destinations, and now there is also a blog written by our mom, available on each place we visit. We thought it would be fun for her to share her unique insights on our travels at 92 years young. If you'd like to read what we are calling Barb's blog, you can find it on our website under the blog tab. We also have a video version of our podcast that we publish on our YouTube channel at Places People Purpose. These are just other ways you can enjoy the places we visit. Our goal is to develop amazing content and provide it to you in ways you want to experience it. If you have any input or suggestions for us, we would welcome those. With that, let's jump into today's episode and learn more exciting information about the magical city of Paris and France. The history of Paris after World War II to the present day is marked by a series of significant political, cultural, and social developments that have transformed the city into the vibrant and dynamic metropolis it is today. France experienced a period of economic growth and prosperity in the post-war years, contributing to an improved standard of living for many Parisians. The 1950s and 1960s were characterized by rapid economic growth in France, known as Trente Glorieuses, which means 30 glorious years. Paris experienced a construction boom with the development of modern housing complexes in the suburbs. The city's infrastructure expanded, including the construction of highways, airports, and the expansion of the Paris Metro system. France also saw a period of relative political stability during this time. Charles de Gaulle, a war hero and leader of the Free French forces during World War II, served as both the Prime Minister and later the President of France during the 1950s and 1960s. His leadership provided a sense of continuity and stability in a post-war era. In 1957, France joined West Germany as one of 6 European nations in the forming of the European Economic Community, now known as the European Union. And Paris continued to be a cultural hub during the 50s and 60s. It was the epicenter of the existentialist movement, with philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus shaping intellectual discourse. The city also attracted artists, writers, and musicians from around the world, contributing to its reputation as a center of creativity. French cinema flourished during this period, with the emergence of the French New Wave in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Filmmakers like François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard created groundbreaking films that had a lasting impact on world cinema. Paris continued to be a fashion capital, and iconic designers like Coco Chanel and Yves Saint Laurent influenced global fashion trends. The 1950s saw the introduction of the New Look by Christian Dior, which redefined women's fashion with its luxurious hourglass silhouette. But in May of 1968, Paris became the epicenter of nationwide student and labor protests. Demonstrations and strikes paralyzed the city as students and workers called for political and social change. The 1968 protests in Paris were part of a global wave of civil unrest and student movements, and they had a profound impact on French society and politics. The protests began in early May when students from the University of Nanterre in the Paris suburbs occupied the administration building to demand reforms in higher education. Their grievances included concerns about overcrowded and outdated university facilities, restrictions on personal freedoms, and opposition to the Vietnam War. On May 3, 1968, the police forcefully evicted student protesters from Nanterre. This event triggered a more significant wave of demonstrations and solidarity protests by students from other universities, including the prestigious Sorbonne in central Paris. The student protests quickly gained the support of labor unions, leading to a general strike that paralyzed various sectors of the French economy. Millions of workers across France joined the strike, demanding higher wages, better working conditions, and more workers' rights. May 1968 saw massive street demonstrations in Paris. The protests created significant political instability in France. President Charles de Gaulle dissolved the National Assembly and called for new elections in June of 1968. The situation led to speculation about the possible collapse of the French government. Amid the crisis, negotiations took place between the government, labor unions, and protest leaders. Agreements were reached to end the strikes and address some of the protesters' demands. President de Gaulle's party emerged victorious in the June elections, which helped stabilize the political situation. While the May 1968 protests did not lead to a full-scale revolution, it had a lasting impact on French society and politics. The events of 1968 contributed to social and cultural changes, including shifts in attitudes toward authority, greater personal freedoms, and a more liberal society. The protests also influenced political movements and activism in France for years to come. During the 1970s and 1980s, the construction of iconic landmarks like the Centre Pompidou and La Défense Business District transformed the city's skyline. Paris also experienced a cultural renaissance, with the emergence of influential movements in music, fashion, and the arts. In the late 20th century, like many urban centers, Paris faced challenges associated with globalization, rising housing costs, and urban sprawl. Paris has continued to grapple with urban issues like housing affordability, transportation, and environmental sustainability in the 21st century. The city has undertaken ambitious projects to address these challenges, such as expanding its public transportation system and implementing initiatives to reduce air pollution. Of course, we all know about the devastating fire at Notre Dame Cathedral in 2019, which led to a massive international effort to restore the iconic landmark. Our photos of Notre Dame are from before the fire, and we would love to return to Paris to see the reconstructed cathedral. Current updates on the reconstruction indicate that the Parisian cathedral's nave is expected to reopen to the public by the end of 2024, but that the work to restore the entire site could last until 2028. Paris continues to evolve as a global city that combines its rich history and cultural heritage with modern challenges and opportunities. It remains a symbol of art, fashion, cuisine, and innovation, attracting visitors and residents from around the world. We can't wait to share with you the many joys, experiences, and discoveries that we had during our time together in Paris. Well, that's all we have for today's episode of Places, People, Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning about the history of the city of Paris. For the next episode, we will start delving into some of the amazing places within the city that are rich in their history and culture. This will be a fun and interesting journey. So please join us for our next episode of Places, People, Purpose, where we create connections to our world.